So beautiful. Soul family, Rebecca here, your Vibe mentor. Welcome to another connection point with a beautiful woman by the name of Michelle Ward. I'm so excited to introduce you to her today. She is a self-sabotage coach and certified emotion code practitioner. And she has many, many accomplishments. She has a master's of science in coaching and applied nutrition, certified health coach, as well as a sabotage coach. She also has a nutrition degree from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And as she was helping people heal their bodies, she recognized they also needed mindset work to be able to sustain those changes. So she helps people understand why your subconscious programs sabotage you and how to remove those stuck emotions so that you can finally heal once and for all. She has lots of freebies for you today, so make sure you stick around to the end to learn how to get in touch with her and how to receive the 4 different freebies she has offered. So without further ado, here is Michelle. Welcome, 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 Michelle. Welcome to the Vibe Mentor Soul family. So happy to have you here.
I'm so grateful to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, welcome. So tell us more about you. Who are you and what do you do?
So, my name is Michelle Ward, and I am a self-sabotage coach, and I do energy work using the emotion code to help release trapped emotions. Um, and I started, really in the nutrition and lifestyle space, which I take a holistic approach. It's all encompassing, and I work with a lot of women, a lot of women. So.
Yeah, such a beautiful combination because the body keeps the score. So we have to
Yes,
address internally and externally all of the challenges. So beautiful. We're so happy to have you here.
thank
And
you.
just a reminder for the community that we offer these stories as a remembrance that we are all in this together, that many of us signed up for pretty challenging experiences. And so it can be helpful to share your story and remind people that they're not alone in this, and that if we can step out of the 3D matrix into our own purpose, they can too. So tell us more about your origin story. What was your childhood like, or what were the challenges that you faced early on in life?
Well, I was born and raised and lived in Texas all my life. So it wasn't I don't know how old I was, but I asked the question one day to my mom. I said, "Who's my real dad?" And she was shocked because she was married to the man that I knew as my dad, who I called my dad. But apparently, she then shared with me that she'd gotten pregnant out of wedlock. Well, she didn't tell me that whole story, but that I had another dad that had given me up for adoption. And I remember that being very confusing to me. Um, but I didn't know how to process it because I must have been like 4 or 5 years old whenever I asked the question. And so I was always curious about that. Well, so my adoptive father, he was a very angry man. He had some life experiences that he had not dealt with, and so he was verbally and physically abusive. So I didn't know because subconscious programming occurs from the third trimester in the womb up until age 7. So during this time period, I didn't know what I was feeling, but I felt like I had been abandoned and that I wasn't lovable and that that I was wrong, and so I couldn't do anything right. So that kind of set the course for um, my life for decades, where I just was always striving to be somebody or figure out who I was. Got deeply ingrained in the church, in religion, and tried to live this perfect life, but knowing innately that I wasn't a perfect person, or that's just, what the church and society tells you. So it was a rough ride for a while.
Yeah, how fascinating that even at 3, 4 years old, you had that suspicion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was always an intuitive child, but I could I could predict like the phone ringing before it would ring, and this went into my teenage years and all that. And I could feel things, but you learn to ignore that because of whatever safety mechanisms that you were programmed to ignore,
yeah.
So.
Often society invalidates our intuition, making us doubt it instead of confirming it and helping us grow it. So Very,
exactly.
very fascinating. You also had some of that religious trauma too, because it tends to be pretty common in our community as well. Tell me more about how that showed up for you later in life, just that need to be perfect and questioning if you've done it right.
Well, I remember having this conversation with this woman. I was doing some volunteer work for the junior league in Dallas, and I remember her saying something like, um, she, I was going to hell before I thought I was a Christian, but before that, when I thought I was a Christian, I know now that I was going to hell, and I was like, well, how do you ever even know if you're, like going to heaven or hell? And at that point, I was, very involved in the church, and I remember that just really made a mark on me. I don't even know if I ever saw that woman ever again, but. I think that was my constant struggle, being in the church is like, I'd have a negative thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, confess my sin. I've got to confess my sin. Or, I would, whatever, I would sin or I'd miss the target as they call sin in church. But there was always this like, battle, of not knowing like, where am I going to end up? If I die tomorrow, am I going to have to, am I going to be separated from God forever? And so then, you start asking questions and some things, some incongruencies that are in the Bible that just don't make sense. Like, if God is an all-loving, unconditional, loving God, then why would he send somebody to hell, Or how is it that a baby just out of the womb is born with original sin? If a perfect God can create an imperfect being, that just didn't add up. Well, so, to ask these questions or you ponder them in a Bible study or whatever, well, the answer was always, well, God's ways are higher than our ways. And so some things happened at the church that we were at for the most, my husband and I attended for most of our married life at the beginning, where we kind of started seeing the cracks in leadership. And it was upsetting. And because we were very involved in like leadership positions and so we ended up leaving that church and going to another church. Well, that church kind of imploded. And so we were kind of left without a church home to go to. And that was the best thing that has ever happened to us as a couple, but to me personally, from moving out of the religion and into more of a spiritual path. And I've kind of done it alone. I mean, not with, I mean, my husband, he's like explore what you want, but he's not he's not quite where I am now, but he's okay with where I am. So it's not a difficult path to walk, but it's just, whenever all your friends and all your community thinks a certain way, it's kind of a hard thing to do. It takes some courage and some discernment, to say the least. So I started just looking into, um, you know, the Bible and learning about and other religions and learning about basically they all say the same thing. It's like it's all about love, and God is love, but it's approached a different, by through different paths. And so that started probably about 8 years ago. Um, whenever I started really digging into it, and now it's just kind of catapulted into a whole new reality, which isn't reality, right?
Existence.
Existence is a better
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
Yeah. We could so easily go down that path, and I think we'll come back to it. But I kind
Yeah,
of want to cover sort of your breakdown to breakthrough moment before we start digging into
sure.
more about that. So, what was kind of the catalyst that helped you inspire the awakening and bring all of this awareness to the fore for you?
So the straw that broke the camel's back is quite an embarrassing story, but not really. It's kind of funny now that I look back at it. But for years, I was always looking for something that I would be good at. Like I wanted to be good at something. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be validated. I wanted to be adored. All the things that I didn't receive as a child, right? And so I started playing tennis, probably for about 10 years, and I would go to different tennis teams and all this. And so I found, and if you know anything about tennis in Texas, oh my gosh, it's like all these women get together just to have fun and play, but it turns into a very competitive like thing that is, if you're not built for that kind of competitive have that kind of competitive spirit, then it can be very discouraging to say the least. So I was on this team for a few years, and it started off like everybody's going to play the same amount of matches, and we're just here to have fun. We're not here to just win and all that stuff. Well, it evolved into, only the best players are going to play. And so I wasn't one of the best players. And so I wouldn't get to play. And so I started getting really angry about it. And I started creating these stories in my mind. And I became a crazy person. Like, I don't know, I was rude to my teammates. I just unloaded on my captain a couple of times. This one last semester or this last season I was playing in 2019. And I remember thinking, I don't know why this is so important to me, but this is not who I am and this is not who I want to be. And I've burned a lot of bridges and I've alienated myself and I got to step out of this. So that was in November of 2019. And but then, 2020 happened and the entire world imploded, but my life continued to just, it was like this domino effect, all these things started happening. I had well, first of all, I was drinking like so much. And that is a familial, curse, really. Um, so I would drink my sorrows away, not realizing that's what I was doing. But I had a wine business that fell apart because 2020 you couldn't get together with people and kind of sell your product. So that was one of the first things that happened. My youngest daughter was a senior in high school, and all of her senior stuff got canceled. My oldest daughter was a freshman in college, and she had to come home from college, which and so my senior was like, I was supposed to have a year alone with my family, kind of thing, and so there was some tension there. My dad was had been diagnosed with cancer 5 years before, and he started getting not he wasn't well, so he ended up dying September 8th of 2020. But a couple of weeks before he died, we reconciled. We didn't have a great relationship. Had been angry at him for years. I resented him. I wouldn't let him in, even though he'd changed a lot. And so there was some regret on my side, but we just had this wonderful 2 weeks together while he was in hospice, and I took care of him. And but then my mom was not handling it well. She was chaotic. She was drunk. I was having to deal with her, deal with, the feelings of what was going on with my dad. And then 3 weeks after my dad passed away, my husband decided and told me that he wanted a divorce and that he had never been happy in our marriage. And we'd been married for 23 years. And I was like, okay, I, that's not true. I don't know what's going on with you. And then one of my dearest, closest friends was going into the hospital because of an eating disorder. And I finally realized at that point, I remember I was standing in my kitchen and I look up to the heavens and I said, I don't know what's going on here, but I trust you, God, and I just surrender. And I literally surrendered at that moment. And it was almost like this that the Bible talks about a peace that surpasses understanding did come over me. And it was just a moment where I just had to surrender. And then I realized, my husband would always say to our children, like, basically take responsibility for all of, your choices and the outcomes, because everywhere you go, there you are. And so I was the common denominator in all this, and the way I was reacting, responding, ruminating, whatever was not helpful, and it was creating a ripple effect outside of me that was not what I was wanting. So, yeah, that was kind of, oh, and to top it off with all that, um, I didn't mention this to you before, but I had taken up smoking again. So I'm a health coach, and I'm
Mhm.
smoking cigarettes and drinking like crazy. So I'm a fraud. you know?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I just really had to take stock and take some inventory and be like, something's got to change here.
Yeah. Wow. And you pretty much can't have any more on your plate. There's nothing left at that point where everything just is crumbling down.
Yeah. And, I refused to be a victim. That's one thing that, I've always talked to my children about. You're never a victim. You've got to take responsibility for where you are. And, maybe you didn't cause something to happen, but it's your responsibility on how you deal with it. And so I was like, I got to take some of my own advice here.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. That's such a good point because it's so easy to feel at the mercy of life. And yet if we go down that path, we're hopeless,
yes,
powerless. We
exactly.
cannot change. So we have to take that path. So what was your first step in healing? What was the next step for you?
Well, the first step obviously was like, okay, I, I've created this. How have I created this? So I had been doing a lot of the spiritual work and the mindset work prior to. So I started learning about subconscious programming and just really, it takes courage to, um, first of all, admit that you're wrong, but also um, to face your quote unquote demons. And so I actually went to a therapist, my spiritual guide, and she was very helpful in helping me to identify where some of this stuff was coming from. And it's not like taking blame off of me, but, it's the thing that I tell my clients all the time is you're not malfunctioning, you're not broken, you don't need to be fixed, you're just programmed. And so, I recognized the programming and started doing the work to deprogram myself.
Beautiful. Yeah. And isn't it fascinating how you had that difficult relationship with your father and anger towards him, and that ended up being reflected to you through the experience on the tennis team?
Yes.
And this is where it can be very difficult if we don't understand how to navigate what's coming up and why we're experiencing that, because it is subconscious, which means literally below your conscious awareness. And we're drawing in these experiences. And I love that you bring in the fixing and the brokenness, because
Mhm.
that's sort of the tie between organized religion versus God, right? and
Exactly.
and that guilt and shame and brokenness message. Yes, I understand we have to get to the moment of breakdown to surrender, and that's important. But if we take on the identity as a sinner or as an inherently flawed or
Yes.
broken person that needs to be fixed, you're always in that trauma responsive perfectionism, trying to fix something that was never actually broken in the first place. It was a program, like you said. So tell me more. Like, you started to get into the subconscious and learning how to find this. What was next?
Well, let's go back to the whole religion thing. Whenever I was, I don't know, maybe 26, 27, I claimed this verse in Romans from the Bible
Mm-hmm.
as my life verse, and it said it's Romans 8:28 that all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose. And so I'd seen that play out so many times in my life. I mean, I could give you story after story, but we don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that moment, that whole subconscious reprogramming moment, like I'm like, okay, I've got to look back on my life to see that God has worked all this out and like this has all happened for a reason, right? And that my guides, my God, my the divine presence is with me all the time and
Mm-hmm.
has been and has proven itself to be with me throughout my life because I have this evidence, I have this evidence, and I have this evidence. So I really drew on that um, to um, to really face that whole subconscious reprogramming thing. So it started with like recognizing the abandonment, the feelings of not being like the belief that I'm not lovable. Some of my closest friends have told me, when I first met you, you were so guarded. You had this wall upon, I just thought you had that RBF, like, and but you're just one of the kindest people and most giving, loving people that I know. But you had to break that down with me because I didn't want to be hurt. I didn't want to be rejected anymore. Well, so all those the subconscious is actually there to protect you, and to keep you safe. Well, and that is very necessary for the first, 7, 10, 15 years of our life. But at some point, those subconscious beliefs aren't safe anymore. And so I had to look back and say, you know what, I am actually a lovable person. I had to start looking for the things in myself that were worthy of praise, just like, the Bible says, and not feel bad about, or feel like I wasn't being humble, or feel guilty about those things, because those are God-given traits that, and start believing that I am lovable, that that I'm not going to be abandoned, and that everything always works out for my good. It's a process. It's journaling. It's remembering. It's writing out things. You don't even know what you're writing, but you're just writing, just a stream of consciousness. And then you go back and look at this and look for the patterns. Like, okay, I see this, I see this, I see this. Is that true? And then asking the question, is that true?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna look for the evidence in my life that that's not true.
Mhm.
So it just starts changing your brain, the neuroplasticity of your brain, rewiring those connections,
Mhm.
into more positive, for more positive outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you bring up Romans too, because another one of my favorite verses is to be transformed by the renewal of your mind,
Romans
right?
12 too, yeah.
Yes, yes. And I'm in a neuroscience and trauma program that literally is founded on that verse. So I think it's really important to note for anyone who's new in this video to my community or to this channel or to your community that we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That just because organized religion changed the instructions or the guidance of the Bible to suit whatever pursuit they were after at that moment
Mhm,
doesn't mean that it's all bad, and that there is some really profound guidance in how to clarify the vessels, how to strengthen the body, how to be all that we were made to be. And I love that you mentioned when you were on the tennis team, you were looking to be valuable, you were looking to be seen and validated. And I don't think I mentioned this to you, but the acronym VIBE actually stands for value and intention based education, because you are valuable,
mhm,
right? And there's a part of us that knows that you were made with purpose and everything is working for your good. And to return to the remembrance of knowing your divinity, right? You were made perfectly imperfect for a purpose by the creator of the universe. Every hair
exactly.
on your head is counted, right? That you get to be that valuable person. And it's just the subconscious programs that get in the way and keep us from that. So this is such a beautiful gift that you're offering to the world.
I mean, I've seen such a profound change in my life, and by extension, the lives of the people around me, because when you change, then everything else changes around you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're not changing, but your perspective changes
Mm-hmm.
1000%. And so, back to, my husband who's saying he wanted a divorce, we went through this, um, very difficult period for about a year. And I was like, I have zero control over you. I'm like, I sit there thinking this to myself. I wouldn't say it to him. I have zero control over this situation. I can only control myself. Well, he saw a change in me, and it made him, like, he uncomfortable, I think. Like, he was like, what is going on here? Because I didn't react the way I used to react. I didn't fight. I didn't, argue. I wasn't trying to be right. I would listen and all this stuff. And one day he came to me and he said, I just had this, experience. He said, I was praying, because I didn't know what to do about us and all that. And he said, and I felt this overwhelming sense of love just wash over me, this unconditional love wash over me. And he was in his office, and he said, and I looked up and he said, God showed me your face. And he's like, it was like your face in this angelic, like, in an angelic way, like this light being. And God said to my heart, everything that you've ever wanted has always been right in front of you. And he said, that's when I realized that I had been wrong this entire time. And it, that will that happen for everybody? I don't know, but I do know that that wouldn't have happened if I had not changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was pushing him away, just like I was pushing everybody else in my life away.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting too, because you were mentioning with the tennis team again, how it made you so angry. And it's almost as if someone was taking away the very source of your existence, right? If you're not
Yes.
validated, the anger is like, but wait, I need this, right? And so our responses and the way we behave in life when we're in our unhealed wounds, we behave somewhat unresourcefully. We right
Exactly.
because the program says that if you don't validate me, I don't exist or I'm not valuable. And as you started to clarify that, you became whole again or renewed in some way or realigned to your original design and able to show your beauty and be seen and allow him to see you.
Yeah. It, I mean, and these are only just like little snippets of things. I mean, these are like the tip of the iceberg, but there were so many other different things that happened over this period of time. Like I would, would ask God to show me something, and I would have a dream or I'd hear a voice or, um, you know, and I'm not crazy, but I literally would hear God's voice, and that's happened so much throughout my life.
Mm,
There's a verse in the Old Testament that says you'll hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." That voice, that still small voice, was always behind me.
mm,
And just being able to tune back into that intuitive knowing, to the voice of God,
mm,
however it shows up in your life, is so it's exciting. It's empowering, although I don't like the word empower, because that that kind of says that you have to get your power from something outside, but God's within us. So anyway, it's been a fun, exciting journey,
yeah.
to say the
Yeah.
least.
I've had goosebumps multiple times. You just say things and it's you like you say you can feel the presence of the creator of the universe inside of your body and the ability to discern and to hear is available to us all. But
Yes.
man, does that unhealed trauma get in the way?
Yeah, and trapped emotions that can
Yep.
show up as balls of energy in your body and lodge itself into your body and manifest as pain, as headaches or just discomfort or achiness. I mean, there can be physical manifestations of trapped emotions, but there can also, be emotional manifestations. There can be mental, spiritual, for sure.
Yeah. 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 That's such an important point, and I would like to spend a little more time on that because the way I see my work is restoring intimacy with the divine through the healing of our mind and our body. And you talk about stuck emotion and balls of energy. Tell me more about that, right? So people don't quite understand, or because we're suppressing or repressing, we've become numb to and blind to the junk that gets in the way, the static of the system, right? And this work is clarifying the vessel so that you can receive and hear clearly. So tell me more about the balls of energy.
Well, so, if you remember anything from, science, is we know that everything is energy
Mm,
and energy cannot be created or destroyed. Well, emotions are energy as well. And so when we experience emotions, positive or negative, the negative ones can get stuck in the body if you're in a place where, when if you're in a place where you just cannot process that emotion. And it might be something really small, like, somebody might have a stuck emotion from age 28 of rejection because they didn't get the job that they wanted. Well, most people can like move on from that, but because of other confounding factors, that one experience got stuck in the body somehow. And so we have parts of our being of our human suit, that can be a little bit more vulnerable than others, and so energy can go to those more vulnerable areas. Like if maybe you had a previous injury or something like that, then that energy can get trapped there. Well, so I mean, we all have trapped emotions. I mean, if you're alive, you have them. Some of us don't know that it's really affecting our lives, but if I can speak to your subconscious through muscle testing, which is what I do, and ask the subconscious, is there a trapped emotion that is causing these headaches or that's causing this back pain or causing this feeling of not being able to move forward, then the subconscious will give me a yes, and it will tell me what the most, you know, what the most important emotion that needs to be released at that time or that it's ready to release. And so, and it's a simple process. And I'll, ask questions. Is there anything else I need to know about this? I always get an age at when it happens. And it's amazing. My clients are like, yeah, that was like, for example, I got one on vulnerability at age 37 on a client. I said, what happened at age 37? Do you recall anything? She said, yeah, we moved from Chicago to Dallas. And she goes, I knew nobody. And my husband was, traveling all the time and I had three children under the age of four. And so she's like, I didn't know anybody. And she said, I felt very vulnerable. And so, you know, usually in a session, I'll get anywhere from 5 to 10 emotions, but then there takes some processing time and then other things come up. But it's amazing to see people's pain like disappear within one session or clarity or just, this clearness that they hadn't had before. It's really a cool thing. And it's so simple. Everybody should do it. I mean, like, you don't have you don't have to go to a therapist for 3 years and do the talk, which I do believe in talk therapy, but at some point you got to move past that.
Yeah. It's not a complete solution.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I've seen a client who she was 3 years old and she colored a picture and she said, Mommy, look. And mom went, yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was enough. Right.
Mm-hmm.
From that experience, she decided she wasn't valuable and worthy, right? Or
Right.
that nobody would pay attention to her, or that the work that she produced was not valuable, right? And so someone who's trying to step into business for themselves is going to
Mm-hmm.
struggle to put out their work and to know that they are valuable and to call in the visibility and being seen. So these things can be so tiny or seemingly tiny and yet have profound impacts on your life.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the beliefs are continued to be built on top of each other. And then you look for evidence to support that belief that
Yep.
I'm not valuable, you know? So,
Confirmation bias. Yeah.
yeah. And so the whole thing about energy not being able to be, we can't create it or destroy it, but what we can do is neutralize it
Mhm.
to where it is not a trigger or a cause for pain or discomfort or not moving forward or, other negative emotions
Yeah.
to proliferate.
Yeah. So emotion is energy in motion, right?
Hmm.
The source of our creation, and therefore the signature of the frequency and vibration that you're putting out. So if you're carrying, my work is not valuable, or people don't care about what I have to offer, that's your signature, right? And because you believe it, you're seeking the evidence, and the reticular activating system is filtering out the things that don't support that belief. So then that becomes your experience. And so it's amazing that if we were just taught how to process emotion in kindergarten or
Right.
in our childhood, we could be moving through these things in 5 minutes
Hmm.
instead of 5 years or 50 years of carrying that with us.
Right. And a lot of people don't even get to the point in life where they realize there's that they're holding themselves back,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so they don't get the opportunity to address those things.
Yeah.
This is just who I am. This is just how God created me.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
not really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Another favorite verse, for I know the plans I have for you, right? Plans to prosper you, to give you a hope and a future. And man, we were also given free will. And so if I'm going to choose to cling to the belief that, I grew up in poverty, or my life is always hard, or things just don't work out for me, guess what? God's going to say, okay, I gave you that gift of free will. You get to hold that.
yeah.
But if you're willing to put it down and hold yourself through the challenge of the uncertainty, you get to step into a beautiful life. And I like to that, and we'll get into sort of starting the business for yourself, right? If anyone here wants to step into their purpose, this work is a critical component in that, because we won't allow ourselves to receive it or feel safe in it. And I know you're starting to work with some business professionals as well. So it's not just starting your own business, but even in traditional corporate, it
Yes.
matters. So tell me more about how you see that show up for people.
Well, so I work with a lot of women also who are going back into the workplace after becoming an empty nester. So that was kind of where I was. I was a stay-at-home mom. My kids left, and then everything, fell down around me, or, fell apart around me. But I'd already been coaching for 15 years before that. Um, but, so I see it show up in self-doubt, like, I haven't worked for 25 years. Who's going to hire me? Well, they don't understand the wisdom and the knowledge and the experiences that they've had is profound in the workplace. So just kind of, finding out what their passions are um, that lead to, what their quote unquote purpose is. And I think purpose can evolve over time. You think about whenever you were 22 and graduated from college and you got a job doing this thing, and you're definitely not doing that thing anymore. It's completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. And so it just kind of evolves. But um, so that's one. But then there's also women who've been extremely successful in their careers and they want to continue moving up the ladder, but they feel like, because being a woman or whatever, that they have to show up as a masculine person in this world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so really, dismantling that belief that you have to be this certain person in order to succeed. And there's a whole process behind it all. I mean, I have a 90-day program that I work with my clients on that. And it actually starts, well, it starts, there's mindset, but it actually starts with treating your temple well. Like you can't have a spiritual practice. You can't be energetic. You can't sleep well. You can't do all these things well if you're treating your body like a trash can. So there's a whole process for that happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's I was in the corporate world for a long time, and very masculine dominant
Hmm.
approach, because that's the world that I worked in. I
Hmm.
was surrounded by the masculine energy every day, and what I've come to realize after stepping out of that and into my own business and this healing work especially is our purpose is thriving, and right, and how I thrive yesterday is going to be different than how I thrive tomorrow, so allowing that evolution, but also recognizing if God created me for that purpose of thriving, becoming all that I was made to be, fully self actualizing, that means my needs must be met. And
Hmm.
that means I get to live a nourishing and supportive life so that in my fullness and in my wholeness, I then pour from an overflowing cup into those around me. Like you said earlier,
Exactly.
everyone changes when you're healthy and whole, right? So even in the corporate world, right, there is zero exception to when you get to have your needs met or when you get to create a nurturing environment for yourself. But it does go back to those subconscious programs and the belief that you can even
Hmm.
have that, right? You
Right.
deserve it. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to be perfect. And you get to decide through belief that I get to have this and therefore call it in. And that's the beauty of this work, right? Not just healing, but stepping into the fullness that God created you to be, and receiving that through the intimacy of the divine, which requires the clarification of the vessel. So,
Yeah,
and
and I heard something today that I thought was super profound along that same vein is that, a lot of us are like, a lot of people that I work with are just like, well, I don't know why, I'm not making this money and why God won't allow this to happen or why I don't have this relationship and why I'm alone and all that. And it's like God's keeping them from something. But God has everything for you. He's actually holding it for you until you are ready to step into that. He's not keeping it from you. And I heard that and I was like, that makes so much sense. I love that, you
mm,
know?
yeah,
So everything that you desire, and I believe that anything that you desire and anything that you can dream up, that is from the divine. That is from God,
absolutely.
And so let's step into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that the phrase, I think Amanda Francis said it first. It's safe to trust the guidance of the desires of your heart. Right. And I kind of add on because God put them there.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yes.
it's not ego desire, right? And if I call it in, I have a deep desire to experience the truest, most divine love. Well, it's not going to come tomorrow, because
Mm.
I have to go through the process of becoming ready for that. And so we tend to kind of go, it doesn't work, right? I quit, I give
Mhm.
up, or God doesn't want me to have that. When we're in preparation, we're in the evolution of becoming the person that can hold that. So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We have to be a little bit mindful of time. So tell me more
Okay.
about how you help people. What are kind of your top tips in stepping out of that self-limited place and into your purpose of thriving or your business or whatever that might be for them?
Well, I kind of touched on this earlier, but I'll say it again. I think the first thing you have to realize is that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken.
Mm-hmm.
um, and nothing needs to be fixed. You're just programmed. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we can find where that early programming started and what those specific emotions are tied to that, and we can release that through the emotion code, through releasing the trapped energy or trapped emotions, then that is like that will catapult you into the next, into your next growth phase. The second thing is that as I touched on earlier, that my life verse is all things work together for good,
Mm-hmm.
um, is that to show up with gratitude, even in the hard things, and look back on your experiences that you consider like bad things that happened to you, and look for the good, and be grateful for the good that came out of that, and how that led you down the certain path to where you are now. So those are two top things, and then honestly, taking care of the temple, taking care of your body, because when you're putting junk and stuff like that into your body, the chemicals, the seed oils, the sugar, the processed foods and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to think straight. You're not going to feel good. You're not going to be energetic. You're not going to sleep well. And so starting with just taking a walk, a 10-minute walk after every meal, without headphones on, without your phone, just go walk around and enjoy nature. Um, drinking water, simple things. Um, so those seem, I don't know if that seems, those might be just kind of simple things to do, but they are actually very profound things to do. I would say the last thing is self-forgiveness, because so many of us live in the past and we regret the things that we did and we don't forgive ourselves. And then we think that the consequences that came from certain things we deserve. Well, that's not who God is to in you, you know? Um, if you can't forgive yourself, then you are not going to be able to grow spiritually, evolve, and be everything that you were meant to be. I mean, we have a divine purpose. We are divine beings the second we're, conceived, and even before that, actually. And so, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but you are a divine being. Step into it.
Yeah. Forgiveness is such a huge piece. Just have grace for yourself, right? If you're sending the arrows at yourself, you're subconsciously saying, I don't deserve, and therefore won't allow yourself to receive. So
Yeah. Hadn't heard it
mhm.
put that way. That's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Tell me more about the offering that you have for the community today. I know you have quite a few freebies you mentioned.
Yeah. So if you go to my website, it's elanvital-coaching.com, elanvital-coaching.com. Um, then there's a self-sabotage quiz. It's kind of a fun little quiz you can take to find out where you are on the spectrum of self-sabotage. There's a free, a complimentary discovery call option. And then for anybody that is listening to this podcast or this seeing this, um, I'm offering $200 off my premium program for any listeners. So when you reach out to me, just say you saw me on the Vibe with Rebecca, and I will apply that. Um, so yeah, and then I actually uh, I'm an affiliate for a line of natural products for brain health, NAD, for weight loss, and things like that. And so I've got a 10% off coupon for that.
Wonderful. It's very generous of you. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that with the community. What products and services do you offer? If people are interested, how could they work with you?
So I'm a coach. So I have, different programs just depending on what it is and where you are, what it is you're looking for, where you are. Am I just looking for a nutrition plan? I don't care about all the subconscious programming, that I've got that. Or are you looking for, the emotion code, the subconscious reprogramming, and a nutrition lifestyle plan? Then I've got a program for that. If you just want to do a few sessions, then you can sign up for the emotion code sessions. I could, provide a link for that as well. So it's kind of I everybody is bio-individualistic, which means not everybody. I don't take a cutter approach to overall wellness and spiritual health and all that. So a good place to start is a conversation that with a discovery call to see what it is that you're looking for and how I can fit into that plan. So
Perfect. Of course, all of the links will be below. So just check out the description box if you want to connect that way. And then where can people find you on social media? What is your handle?
so on Instagram it's at Elon Vital _coaching. Facebook and YouTube is Elon Vital Coaching. I am on LinkedIn, post some articles on there, and you can just find me under Michelle Ward in Dallas, Texas. So
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time, your story, your gift. I think it's probably really important to note, just for the community to notice the journey that you went through early on in childhood and in your sort of breakthrough moment became the very foundation and the catalyst for your purpose, and now is the very gift that you can offer. So as a recap, a reminder to the community, you are not alone. If we can heal and start our own businesses, you can too. Your purpose is very, very valuable. You are valuable, and your pain ends up turning into a purpose. So do the work so that you can step into it.
that's right. Well, thank you so much for having me today. This is just the cherry on the top of my day and hadn't even really started yet. So I appreciate you having me
Oh,
here in this
I,
wonderful conversation
I
and
appreciate
everything
you as
that you're
well.
doing as well.
Oh, thank you. Time flies. I
I
feel
know.
I feel like we were talking for 5 minutes, so clearly we're having fun. So it was such a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to whatever the future holds for us. I'm certain we'll be in contact again soon. So
Absolutely, 100%.
beautiful. Sending you
Right.
lots of love.
Thank you.